Hello, fellow Mythrunians. Welcome to another weekly live stream. I'm Paul, if you didn't already know that, and this is my game, Mythruna, and we work on developing it every Friday night when I can. So tonight we're going to be working on trying to finish up the encounter system because it fell a little short at the end of the live stream. We were working on it, and I never got back to it because I got sidetracked with other things. Once again, down at the bottom of the screen at mythruna.com, there you can see the full URL for where you can download the January version. I'm trying really hard to get a version out this month, but probably looking at mid-May just because I've got life things happening next weekend, the weekend after, and the weekend after. I think is the way it goes. So we'll see. That's such is the life of having a high school senior. So let me thank the patrons before we get started. You guys really rock. Thank you so much for supporting the project. And now we can go to the Drost effect here. And the link, if you forget it, it's up in the upper left there. You can see it up here. I've got the game already running in the background. YouTube says there I have 4 viewers. It says here I have none, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. So I've got the game already running. I was going around and deleting. I had spawned in a bunch of mobs to take that picture for the thumbnail. And then I forgot that the the decay times are set really high right now because I was testing the AI stuff and I didn't want my stuff despawning all the time. So I was going around hunting down the different things and deleting them. Howdy, Andres. However you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I butchered it. Okay, so real quickly, let me go over some of the stuff I did get done. Basically, I was working on that model view state, which I'm not going to show much of, but except to show that to test some things, I did put the, you can see from really far away that airship hanging out there. So that's really the only thing I have to show that's very interesting. Yeah, so we can go zoom in over there. Whoa! And I don't have proper colliders for the spheres yet. So if we go out here, you can see I can walk right between them because they basically act like cubes right now. I have to fix that because it's really hard to get down into the boat when you can't fly around the... But so we got our little airship going on here, which I think is kind of cool. As you can go down inside. Let's see. So eventually there'll be like stuff in here. But it's supposed to be a very small, kind of single person, maybe small crew airship with a little bit of cargo space down here, just for storing whatever stuff you might be traveling with. Woo! Can we get out of the hole? Eventually there'll be a ladder. Alright. So anyway, I think it's kind of a cool, just working out the scale of things, and I think I like the scale of it. Yeah, but that's what I put it in to test the large objects because basically when you're far away, like there is actually another one over here, but it's not set up as a large object. So if we fly over here, it will eventually pop in somewhere up here, I think is where it is. But we have to get pretty close to it because most objects kind of spawn in. Yeah, there it is. When you get pretty close to them, like 32 to 64 meters away or something. See that other one you can still see because it's got the large object support. And this one's just a regular. Same kind of when you place a chair or whatever, that's what this one is. But the cool thing is when you're in here, you can like click and drag it around like you can any other object, and that actually moves you with it. So you can like fly it around a little bit, move it up and down and stuff. We used to do that in the old Mythruna all the time with these little boats we would make with the blueprint editor. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, so that's what we're doing there. What I want to get working today is, so got my list here. So I want to get proper encounter system. So we're going to add like a zone activation listener support. Oops. Oops. Crap. I hate that it does that. I really wish I could turn that off easily. because like I never want that. So let's just go bullets. So zone activation listener support, a listener to create encounter entities, and then encounter system to activate, deactivate encounter entities. So we get to do a lot of entity system stuff. Last time we had it, basically as we move around the world from zone to zone, the AI is already getting turned on, and so I turned on and turned off as we move around, and based on zone, and I hooked into that to kind of call a script on the world, and it's a little kludgy because the scripts are called on a background thread, but they're calling like a regular script method, which is weird. And so I actually do want to do this part on a background thread, because deciding you're going to create an encounter and so on could take a while. Yeah, okay. And anyway, there's some still stuff I want to work out here, and then the encounter system will run on the game thread, so it has proper threaded access to everything. If we get time, I'd like to do a little debugging in the town to figure out why sometimes the NPCs that spawn in automatically get assigned to the wrong building. They're supposed to get assigned to temples, but sometimes they get assigned to the building next to a temple. And sometimes they get assigned to build completely different buildings, and I think it has to do with confusion when the town is generated. Like the random seed it uses, I think, gets mixed up. And I hope that's not the case, but that's what I think is happening. And then I want to, like, randomly for certain towns, like, spawn in a dog that belongs to the NPC, and like in certain maybe some farms, spawn in a dog and some Gafen just to kind of wander around near the farmhouse and stuff like that, if we have time, sort of based on this encounter system. But initially we're dealing with butterflies, right? Because that's what we've got, and we want to have the butterflies spawn in on flowers, which is a pretty decent test. So anyway, so where I was testing butterflies was over here, because there were some flowers in this area, like right here. See, up in there, there's some flowers. So that means when we spawn in some butterflies, we'll get to see them. Okay. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, or just talk about the game in general. An active chat's a fun chat. But otherwise, we're going to be spending some time in Java tonight before we get to do anything fun and graphical and so on. So so without further ado, let's get started. Yeah, so here was some of my design stuff. I actually did find I had an encounter system already that deals with the random sounds. And so I looked to see if I could tap into that. And that's all runtime based. It doesn't persist anything, and we really want something that like sticks around. So I started designing out some things. Some stuff I like, some stuff I don't. I think I kind of came up with an approach I like, which is that there'll be these encounter triggers that can be associated with a zone, and the actual encounter entity. That way, if we have, I really meant to bring this up before. I'm trying to think ahead right now. Come on. Like right now I'm thinking, like, if these are zones in the world, I'm thinking of encounters that take the whole zone. So they would take the whole zone like this, and that's fine. But I'm also thinking ahead to maybe encounters that I want to cross zones, in which case I can put a trigger here, a trigger here, and a trigger here, and a trigger here that knows they all point to the same entity, so that if this zone gets activated, it will activate this. If this zone gets activated, it will activate this, and so on. And some logic to keep track of that it doesn't get activated or deactivated more than once. But I think this will be more flexible than a pure cell-based approach, because at some point in the world I'm going to know where forests are and things like that, and I might want to have certain encounters manage a whole forest, or certain encounters manage a whole field, and so on and so forth. So I want the flexibility of being able to do that and have, the per zone thing that can activate the thing that might cover more zones. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. We gotta get some work done. First, let's hook up the listener, because I think I'm going to use that for a lot of stuff. I also think I'm going to need a heartbeat. I actually needed that to test something, and I realized I don't have a way to have objects script called every X seconds or whatever, and that would have been really nice to happen, because I wanted to have a light blink on and off to test something, and I couldn't do it. But let's see, we want a listener here, and I'm trying to think the best way to do this. So we want not an agent activation listener, we want a zone activation. Let's call it an agent zone listener, or activation zone listener. Activated, it's this activation system, so activation zone listener. It works. That can always be renamed later. So, oops, AO, not AI, not AO, AO. So this is just an interface, and we want to say activate zone and deactivate zone, and I think just zone ID. Yep. Let's see, do we actually use the column ID? We do. I'm tempted to just use the long value. Because right now zones work on the 2D top-down map. So when I talk about a zone, this is like a zone on the terrain, 32 by 32 meter square. But there's considerable depth there. I mean, that's potentially like 700 blocks worth of data from the top to the bottom, depending on how thick that, 128 meters just to sea level, and then another 500 or something, 600 up that it could be, and there could be lots of AI things in there, down underground, on the ground, up in the air, and I don't know that I want to activate them all, just because, like, if you're flying over in an airship, I don't necessarily need to activate the bugs in the bottom of the caves. Yeah, some of that, what I want is, so that's already done. Like when you leave the town, the NPC that's wandering around, he goes to sleep. But also built into there, I want to have random encounters. These are things that they only spawn in when you're nearby, like butterflies. They don't need to have an existence beyond your presence. And so as players walk around, different zones get activated and deactivated. And so some encounters, at least these kinds of encounters, would like look at the flowers and decide, based on some formula that, hey, there's this many flowers here, I'm going to spawn in this many butterflies, that kind of thing. So that when you finally walk over there are butterflies already hovering around the flowers doing their thing. And eventually it will expand so that certain encounters may maintain some other things like rabbit populations, stuff like that. I can't meet the same butterfly again? No. No, sorry. So, but anyway, as I was saying, and so as I'm activating zones and deactivating zones, I kind of regret that I did this on a 2D grid, because, if you're flying over in an airship, that means, if there's a random encounter for giant cockroaches down, 70 meters underground that you'll never see, I'm still going to activate and spawn in those cockroaches. So I kind of wish I'd done it on the 3D grid instead. And one way I can future-proof my code, and it's still not too late to fix some of that, except for it's all based on spawn position right now, which is a problem. But one way I can insulate that is to not, the column ID is the sort of unique identifier of some 32 by 32 square on the map that goes all the way from bedrock all the way up to the sky. And it has a 64-bit integer value that it's actually, and so if I pass that on as the zone, then it future-proofs me, because I could make that zone ID be something else. I could make it be a leaf ID, which actually is three-dimensional. That's the 32 by 32 by 32 section of the world. So if I do that, I don't think I need anything else. And then we make listener support. I don't. So I did something dumb at one point, and I've been paying for it ever since. But actually, I think in this case, anyway, what I did dumb was I made this array list sort of that you can directly access the array inside of it, and I put it in the physics engine, but then I find I use that class everywhere for any collection that I would want to iterate over quickly without creating garbage. But in this case, I actually do want to use concurrent classes because we want the listeners to be called on the background thread. And so I need to use listeners equals new copy on write array list. Okay, we got listeners. And then standard boiler. That's interesting. We don't really care how fast these run, so we'll spread them out. Did I already spool these out? I did. I still don't think that's desirable in the end. I still need listeners. But I was smart, at least. I made sure. I believe the game actions are run on the game loop thread. Yeah, they're passed in, so yeah. Nice. Okay, so I was smart. But like when we did this before, we hooked right into, we made the world like a scriptable object, and so we called it, so we had like the world be a scriptable object, and then we called activate zone on that and deactivate zone on that, which I like split over to a runtime loadable script, so we could develop it as we went, and I'll do that again when we get there. But then that test zone activation did all this work where it went and searched the leaf data to see, is there even flowers? How many things am I going to spawn? All that other garbage. And the problem with this is that this could take a long time, and I'd rather do it on a background thread, that's part of zone activation and deactivation, than hog the game loop that's, running physics and everything else. So I was smart to do this because it makes the script easier to write, and I'm going to leave that in, but I'm going to go with the listeners because I need these listeners for more than just this, and we'll see as I go. But if I'm going to if I put these out here, I'll put them both. So if I put these out here, and then I give it to the give it to that. So we want keep this. I get to write fewer add methods basically this way. We'll put that there because that's better, and make this. See, after a while, like when you don't use an IDE, you get little tricks for saving time. Cutting and pasting things and putting them around. And the IDE like fights me every time I do stuff like that because it's trying to auto do a bunch of stuff. So we're gonna get rid of this, as cool as it was, and we're going to call fire activate zone. And down here, we'll call fire deactivate zone. Oops. Yes, and then we have to make those methods. But Paul, why do you bother? Oh, we're gonna need to pass the zone. Why do you bother making another method instead of just putting the loop right in there? Well, because sometimes you find later, very common when you have these sorts of methods that fire event loops. In fact, let's go ahead and get the listener set up. Activation zone listener L listeners L dot activate zone. Did I call it activate zone? Yep. Column ID get ID. So I can steal all this, put it there. A lot of times it turns out that you want to call these in some other capacity, not just here. Like if there was a cleanup, you might have to call it, or if you find that you're basically marking a whole bunch of zones acquired that they don't go through this, you may still want to fire it. Anyway, it's just common habit to move these into their own methods because it turns out to save time later quite frequently. Okay, so those, we got listeners. Now we need to add them. Zone listener, activation zone listener. Save yourself time and always make sure that this is the same as this. Just a coding tip, because you will never remember what you called it otherwise. Like I could have just said add zone listener or add listener, and it would have been obvious what I meant. But later, I would have been a sad panda because when I went to type that, oops. Yeah, I get like caught up in what I'm saying. Anyway, later from some other class I'd want to add this. I wouldn't remember what it was. I'd know this, but I wouldn't. So just make a match. It just makes your life easier if you don't have an IDE automatically populating your methods for you. Okay, so listener support set up, which means we could go back and edit the world API to add a listener. So instead of this, we probably still want to create the type because I've already started to do that, and I think it's a good idea for the world to be an entity that has like could take scriptable things, so we'll leave that there for now. But I think we want system, what is it called? Agent activation system. Agent activation system. It's only on the server, or these only, these could only be run on the server. Okay, so then we should be good. Add activation zone listener. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to do this, but that's okay. Like, we can't just do it with closures, but that is fine. That is all good. Eventually, I probably will move this into Java code anyway. Maybe, I don't know. It's got like lots of configurable stuff that we want. So the other thing is, like, before I could only have one of these scripts, whereas now if I want to add one of these for butterflies and add one of these for, you know, giant cockroaches or whatever, I can do it. I can add a bunch of them. They don't all have to be coupled into this one script, so this is better in that respect as well. Log info activate zone ID. All right. So we're about to find all of the problems that I forgot to take care of. Let's see if it even compiles. Ooh. Cannot find symbol. Oh, because I moved the, yeah. I moved the declaration, but not the import. There we go. I hope you all had a great week. My week is starting to get less busy. I hope it'll be even less busy this coming week. We'll see. But older child that injured their foot is way more mobile. We go back to the doctor on Monday. Hopefully we can get out of the boot. Start taking the bus again. We'll see. Yeah, so today I can do a live stream. A week from today I can do a live stream. But the following week, the 3rd, I think May 3rd, I cannot do a live stream. So I'll have to miss May 3rd because younger child, high school senior, is in a musical that I will be going to see all of the shows. They're doing Big Fish, which is apparently pretty good. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so what we want to see, and I will check from another thingamabob, is not that one, this one. So let's grep what did I call it? What is it? Activate zone? Ooh. Alright. Boy, everything goes really slow when you guys are watching. Activate zone. Alright. Now as we so world APIs is what we really want to grep for. World-APIs. Oops. Threw in a client log. Alright, so all those zones got activated. If we leave or we walk around, let's turn on the grid so I know when I've crossed a boundary. Oh, we're right next to one. Cool. Okay, so we should have just deactivated some zones and reactivated them. Yep, deactivated those, activated some new ones. Cool. Listener's working. That's the easy part. Oh, so I thought of something interesting. Well, it doesn't solve my problem of doing the search on a different thread. But you know what? I don't know that I'm going to be able to. Um, what we could do here is just create the entity. But then it would never get called. Yeah. That is the problem. And why am I doing this again? This is why we write, we take notes. Because there was a reason I did this. Okay, there's a certain. Okay, trying to collect some today's problem. Yeah, so I need to be able to despawn them when they leave. But I also want to potentially leave them around for a second. Yeah, manage them reactivating the encounter or deactivating the encounter, and he could then choose to remove them all, depending on the kind of encounter. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I know. Okay, and I'm going to just do it all in this. I'm going to do it all right here, and then we can. I can move them later, but. So if we had this, right, and then we can say. We can give it the zone ID. Activate encounter. No, it just has its zone. It is what it is. Because what we're going to do is, in here we're going to create the entity, but then we're going to make a new system that watches for those particular kinds of entities and when they get activated and deactivated. Because again, like this, there's this trigger, and so this zone might say to activate it, but it's already activated by this zone, so we don't, but it's this thing that we're activating. So we're going to use this to just create an entity if it doesn't already exist for this zone. So we need to find the existing one, which means we want to find. So, and there is a API for this already. Yeah, so we want to find all of them that have a spawn ID, and the spawn ID has or spawn position has a bin filter. Right. It's like the spatial index. Whenever a spawn position, it knows what zone it's in. That's again the 2D zone, which is a problem. I wish I had done this as a 3D zone. I would have had fewer IDs, but not that it would matter, because even if you take 64 bits and divide it up into 3D space, you will have more bins than we could ever hope to visit in our lifetimes. So, but anyway, this is what I want here, is this bin filter. Yeah. Okay, so, excuse me. So, spawn position, bin filter, zone ID. Finally can put a voice on the person. Oh, hi, Mr. Green. Do I know you from somewhere else? All right, bin filter. We want spawn position, and we want a new encounter trigger. Oh, hi, Neko. Nice to meet you. Well, I mean, my voice, your chat. Same kind of encounter for me. So find entities each, and then we'll check to see if it's already got a butterfly. Which I could have done a find. Well, yeah, so if we do this, and let's just neaten this up a little bit, and then find, we want to find, yeah, I'm getting way ahead of myself because I haven't even created the necro, right? I haven't created the component yet, so let's do that real quick. And oh wait, you know, I think I actually, in my design, I put the bin right on the, got too many files open. Yeah, I put the zone ID right there because then if we have 3D zones, yeah, okay. So that's, so all that code that I just commented out is wrong anyway. Too many files open. Too many cooks. Too many cooks. All right. Encounter trigger dot Java. Yep, proprietary Mythruna, so we don't do that. Mythruna, oops. Dot yes. Import comma SimSilica. Yes, star. Implements the component, persistent component. We want them to stick around. All right. For persistence, and then yeah, it's funny because even Windows 95 didn't look like this. Yeah, but this is my Windows NT4 classic. Yep. I didn't like when Windows XP came out and had, like, I called it the cartoon user interface. I didn't like it, so I just went back to classic mode, and I always go back to classic mode because I'm a classic kind of guy. I don't like change unless I institute it. So an ID, actually we want to probably, so we want all that. That means we can do it all in one. Vista, yeah, you probably could. I know I kind of get why people liked Vista, but I avoided it. So I don't have any direct experience with it. Actually, at the time, so it's funny because when Windows 95 was popular, yeah, so this is not even the Windows 95 look, right? I did OS2 development and Windows NT4 development at the same time. I bypassed Windows 95 altogether. The first Windows computer, first Windows consumer level operating system I ever put on a computer was Windows 98, and that was on my music composition computer. And then and so then when I started working, we were using Windows 2000, and eventually they forced us to move to XP. And like, I didn't like the cartoon. I didn't like, you know, the big wide bubbly things. And what's funny now is that oh, nice. What's funny now is that I find that modern operating systems, like I use Linux Mint, for my uh, daily driver at work, and I find that finding the border so that you can drag it is like 1 pixel wide. It's crazy trying to like just expand a window. I'm sure there's like a hotkey to grab it or something, but it's really annoying. Yeah, I don't have. I think the work laptop's Windows 10, and then I run. Um, we run Linux and VMs and stuff. So, um, anyway, so like on development, I tend to use Linux. See, I don't think I need anything else. We do want to grab. I'll steal the filter method because that's super useful. And the reason I'm using a zone ID here instead of giving this particular entity a spawn position is because I am not going to give these triggers spawn positions. The entity itself that it's pointing to will have a spawn position, but this guy will not. And so we want to be able to easily search, and so we want to counter trigger boink boink bin ID. Nope. So we want to call it I think I can just do this and it will find the right things. Yep. Okay. So good. We got one. Let me make sure it compiles. Boink. Who on the chat has ever used an Amiga? So I actually have an Amiga down in my basement, Amiga 1000. I haven't turned it on in a really long time. Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I've seen of it looks like a reskin. I don't like when desktop operating systems integrate with their own app store. It kind of bugs me a little bit. But yeah, no, I'm almost not old enough for an Amiga, but I am old enough for an Amiga. So, who on the chat knows my age? That'll be fun. Blop 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 blop. My Umtrafrumped high school reunion is actually next weekend. Oh, I wish I was still 45. 45 was a great age, by the way. I'm going to well, I'll give you guys a chance to guess some more if you want. While I do this. But, what was I doing? That's right. We're going to appear. Alrighty. So we want to see if encounter trigger zone filter has that zone ID. And in fact, then we don't need the spawn position. And so we can do like that. For now, we're only creating one of them. So I can just say find entity, and I can go back and fix this later. Okay. And so, oldest thing I've ever owned was a Game Boy Advanced. 213. No, I'm not 213. I would look great for 213. No, if you want to do the math, a week from tomorrow is my 35th high school reunion, and I still have to do the math to verify that that's correct. Yeah, so so I'm an old fart. I grew up in the 80s. So yeah, 50. I will turn 53 in July. Yeah. I'm currently a deck of cards. Okay. If we don't have butterflies, we're going to create. Let's just call it trigger. If we find a trigger, then we're good. If we don't find a trigger, then we'll create a butterflies encounter. Create entity, and we want object type info. I think it's create butterfly encounter. Drink, drink, drink. Whoops. And I think we want to give it a spawn position. That is going to require us to interpret the zone ID. Yeah. Alright, so if we don't find a trigger, then we have to column equals column ID from world. No, from. Oh, no. Here's what we do. And then for the spawn position, we can say spawn position create call ID get world, and just no orientation. That is the problem with using spawn position for this. Okay, so we need. Oops. Okay, so I think that's all we need to create it. Else, we'll log that we already had one. Log info found existing trigger. Okay. Oh, we still need to. Yeah, I'm going to add a toString method to that real quick before I forget. When I was younger, my grandmother and my great-grandmother lived with my family. And my great-grandmother at the time, who was in her 80s, she used to say, "It's no sin to grow old, it's just damned inconvenient." And I find I identify with that more and more as time goes on. And then, that's how I check my memory. com.google.common.base.more objects. I believe I got that right. Okay, so back to scripts, back to the groovy. Where'd they go? Where in my list are the scripts? There they go. Lively chat tonight. Glad you guys are here. Okay, and so these align with zones, so I don't need to do anything special. Equals create entity boink, 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 boink. Before we run this, I'm going to show you something. Actually, before I get too far, let me show you something. So, the world is there's an entity database, right? Whenever you have a world, it's building this hypersql database of all the stuff in it, right? We've got spawn positions, we got all kinds of stuff, and you'll notice that this is there's a entity component system library called Zeus, which I wrote long time ago, I actually wrote it for Mythruna and then turned it into something open source, so I already had some experience doing that. But you'll notice that even though we created this new encounter trigger, right, there's no table for that. But I point that out because I'm gonna show you after we run that there will be. Okay, so we're gonna create a trigger. Always create the trigger. New encounter trigger, and I think I made it zone. Yep. Butterflies and zone ID. That's what we want. Oops. So we're going to create the entity. Otherwise, if we already had one, we'll find it. And then we'll have something to use. And on deactivate, so say the irony here is we actually don't want to do anything here. We're going to let this guy handle it later. Although we could delete it in this case. We shall not. We will eventually, I will eventually delete it here because butterflies are transient, but some encounters we'd want them to hang around for a long time. So that it would remember where it left off, kind of thing. Okay, so I think we've got everything we need to at least test this part. But let us see. What have I missed? There's always something. Alrighty. We're looking for stack traces that are not meant to be there. Okay. I meant to. Did I put that we created it? I didn't. I think I meant to add a log that we created it. Well, what we can do. Ooh, no. We actually have a problem. So something crashed way back. And boink. No signature of method, spawn position create. Oh, vec3i. Can't auto coerce. So unfortunately, I need to make a spawn position that takes you know what? I'm going to do that right now because this has hit me so many times and it bugs the hell out of me. Too many classes open. Actually, I think I don't have to do it here. I can do it in the scripting because the fact that I can call spawn position create is because of some mappings down here. Where'd they go? Some groovy magic. It's groovy, man. So yeah, we could. Can I have more than one constructor? I think I can. No, those are two different classes. I actually don't know how to handle that. So what we can do is def loc, and then we can say as vec3d. I think that will coerce it, and I think I've already set up the mathd stuff to have coercion built right in. So we shall see. We'll try again. Here it goes. Come on. I think it's unfortunate that that's the slow part. I think we'd be more tolerant of this being slower. The fact that the first part is slow is also the easiest to fix later, because it said it's compiling all those groovy scripts and running them. Okay, so let's see if it did the same thing or it worked this time. It did the same thing. Maybe don't get fancy on the live stream and just make things work. Where's my... $21, 56, 34. 21, 56, 34. So not very far back. Oh, pretty far back. Fancy gets views, do a flip. Unfortunately, the heart is covering up 34. I wish that I could move this heart somewhere else. One of these days maybe I'll set up a second monitor for the chat. Though I kind of like it being here because you guys can see what the delay is between when I respond, when you type it and I respond. There it goes. Still no figure. Vec3i. That's not right. Okay. I'm gonna stop messing with that. I'd like it to work better, but today is not that day. So we'll do that. Spawn position. Oh! It's just new spawn position. Yeah, Okay. No, okay. Look, I'm going to not worry about that. We'll do what I know will work and stop futzing around with it. So new spawn position, just like that. Okay, and just like that, we can do it. You can do it. Okay. Do a barrel roll. Sometimes you gotta drag those progress bars over. Come on, progress bar. There we go. Come on, you can do it. Right on. Has anybody checked out that Fallout series yet? I'm like halfway through. I'm kind of digging it. I'm watching it again tonight. If I'm watching it with older child. If they're still awake, we're gonna watch it tonight. I look forward to it. It's kind of fun. Having played the games, you know, there's like a lot of inside stuff. Okay, so it's still, what the hell? So 2201. There it is. Oh, I cannot believe it. Ah, I'm such an idiot. Like, I knew this was already a problem. That's the whole thing we've been chasing around. I fixed that thing. Ugh, unbelievable. Yeah. Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah. Like, when, like, they, uh, like, the thing happens and then they find the head and the Fallout music doom, doom, comes in, and I'm like, oh, I got all the feels. It was kind of cool. Yeah, yeah, the whole monster threw up. Oh my god. Of course, the guy who plays the ghoul, Walton Goggins, I love that actor. I think I've loved everything I've seen him in. There was that series Justified, which my wife and I really enjoyed, and he played such a great bad guy in that show. Cousin Raylan, just a good old Kentucky boy. Cousin Raylan, we we pulled coal together, Cousin Raylan. All right, so let's. Yay! Okay, that part works. So, if I turn on. Had a great rack in Sons of Anarchy, and we love Brother. Yeah, I never watched Sons of Anarchy. The premise didn't really interest me. Um, but you know, maybe if I'd seen the right scene to get me enticed, because I wouldn't have thought that Justified would have enticed me. But I like Timothy Oliphant, and but I saw like the first scene or whatever, and it kind of hooked me. Okay, so we should have. Okay, so that's all good. Now if we go back, it should find the one we already created. Ooh. Hello. Hello. Oh yeah, so things happen in it. Okay. So we found existing. Okay, so good. We have our encounter entities. They have been created. We found them already. My dad got some art. Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah. Like I've been meaning to watch Justified again, just the accents in that show and just the way those two characters talk to each other. And Raylan's yeah, sort of just deadpan, this is the way it's going to go down. And he's usually right. Only when he's not, just like the look on his face when things don't go the way he thought that they were going to. I don't know. Enough about that. All right, so now we need to make the system that's going to call these here their methods. And I think we'll use that same game or that game action system. The reason that one was cool is because this the game action system, because when you do this spool world action, for one thing, it's no matter where you run it, it's going to run it on the game loop, which is good and very good. So you don't have to worry about thread contention and weird things, which most of the scripts written are they don't worry about threading. But the other thing is if you've spooled a bunch of them, it's going to spread them over several frames, so it's not going to run them all at once, which I think is kind of cool. But now we need to make a system that keeps track of which encounters are active and which are not. So it's going to listen to this system to see when zones are active and when they're not. And then when they're active, it's going to load all of the encounter triggers for that particular zone. And then if it doesn't already have an encounter for it, it's going to activate it. In fact, we'll probably just use a filter, I think. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we will call this because there's already an encounter system, I think, somewhere. One back up. I thought there was already an encounter system somewhere, so we'll call this the mob encounter system, and we will steal some stuff like that. So see, that's the thing, is like if I did this in an IDE, and I came in here and I pasted this in, it would automatically import a whole bunch of crap that I don't want. I mean, it's like it's my problem, right? Because I'm used to this particular habit. But like a lot of these things that I find I could even do quicker than the IDE, and it's fighting me the whole time. Like the cut and paste tricks I've learned over many years of having to deal with editors that don't have anything fancier than cut and paste. Okay, so we don't need these, we don't need this, we don't need this. We will keep that. So we can boink. We don't need this, or this, or this, or this, or this. We do want that. We do want that. We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need any of that. And we got this. So, okay, we got a basic system set up. Does nothing. It does nothing at all. And so here's where I'm going to steal some more. Actually, I could probably do this from memory. So we want an encounter trigger system, or container. Encounter trigger. And I think we can just use the triggers. I don't think we need anything else. Sometimes these containers are really easy to write. So we get used to a certain amount of boilerplate, ladies and gentlemen. Add object entity e, turn e.get. Yeah. Sometimes this, I mean, these are really meant so that you could have a stand-in object that you're creating that wraps the entity and keeps track of its stuff. But if all you're really tracking is one is it entity, then I think it's object, then entity. If you're only tracking one thing, you don't have to make a special object. Yeah. And we're going to want to do something on each of these things. I'm trying to think what. Okay, we want to say so that's interesting. Yeah, I can't get away with this. Because this trigger will be the original trigger we got. And potentially, technically this entity could have triggers swapped in and out. So we'll make a trigger. That's not a big deal. Yeah, just like that. Okay. Public void update. The entity. No. Yes. No. We don't need to do that at all. Release. Okay, so this is standard stuff. We will encounter. Or no. Trigger. Doink. 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 Oops. Doink. Alright, so we will say trigger equals new trigger E. Update object trigger E. Return trigger. Oops. And then so here we will say object update. This pattern comes up so much that I've almost been tempted to sort of create like an entity container subclass that automatically deals with this. I'm trying to think. Okay, for first, I am not going to be any more complicated than this, I think. So we want to keep track of. So I think for this live stream, I am not going to deactivate and activate based on zone. So maybe we'll see, because I'm like the only player, and these encounters are something that I'm going to delete as we walk off. Well, I'm going to decay them. We'll see. I have an idea, but I don't think I need to do the zone tracking until I have triggers and encounters that last like while the player's not there, and these really should be deleted. All right, so what was I doing? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to make this container. Oh, I know what I was doing. I was going to make a map, entity ID, encounter. So we're definitely going to need encounter index. Alrighty. Oh, we are absolutely going to need a whole bunch of other stuff. We don't need all of that, but I'm going to trim it down in a second. We don't need action yet, but we will, absolutely. Probably need that. We don't need that. Actually don't think we need that. And we definitely don't need these, but we do need encounter trigger. And we will need like maybe we don't. Oh, I bet we do need this to get the game action system. And I think we'll need object type info. But I actually don't think we need that. That's what I'm saying. The game action system, I think we just pass the entity and say run this action, and it's smart. Spool world action. So maybe not. Let's see what the game action system. I can run an action on a target. Yep. Good, good, good. I don't have to worry about looking it up then. Yes, indeed. Alright, so private class encounter. It's going to have the same kind of... I still have to put stuff here. Put stuff here. Put stuff here. Okay. So we want a use count. And I think everything else looks about like this. just for posterity, but in this case we actually don't want to do anything, I think. Oh, no, we don't need these yet. We want acquire and release. These will use count plus plus if use count equals 1, then this is our first one, and then we call game actions run action entity. Was it activating? It's activate encounter. Activate encounter. Okay, and then here use count minus if use count is less than 0, log a warning. Use count went below 0 for entity get ID. Otherwise, use count equals 0. Then we run this, deactivate. Okay, so we've got encounters and blah blah blah. We need to have a method to get an encounter. Whoa. Get encounter entity ID boolean create encounter. Oops. Counter result equals encounter index get entity ID if result equals null and create result equals new encounter entity ID encounter index put entity ID result. Okay, so we've got that guy. Whoops, sorry about the noise if you heard that plop, pop, pop. Okay, so if encounter trigger t equals entity dot get encounter trigger class, if last trigger, so we could just say if poop. This would be a lot easier if I flesh out the equals and hash code methods here. Equals object. Oh, this is the best pattern for an equals method, right? Returns true if they're both the same object, if O equals null, or O dot get class is not equal to get class. They gotta be the same class. You can ask me why, but hope if it's not obvious, but oops. False. Okay. Then we say encounter trigger other equals. Alright, so if zone ID is not equal to other dot zone ID, return false. If not counter ID other counter ID return false, return true. Alright, so we got an equals, we're gonna need a hash code. Can't have one without the other. Super bad. Oopsie. Return objects hash counter zone. Oh, I wanted to show you. So we created that. So it automatically created the table for us. for that encounter trigger, right? So we could select star from encounter trigger, execute. Look at that. Oh, why do we got so many triggers? Oh yeah. For every zone we activated, we got a trigger. Different zone ID. These guys should repeat. Yeah, because every trigger has one zone. Yeah. Every trigger has its own encounter. So that's all good. So that's the point, is that Zeus automatically created the table for us. It's cool. I like it. It's just the right amount of magic. Okay, so this is all good. Blah 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 blah. We need to import import Java util objects. Whoa, there's a jet that flew over really low. We live nearish to the airport. So sometimes you get a rumble, like deep rumble. Okay. So if objects equals T and last trigger, return, don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. And if the last trigger is not equal to null, that means for whatever reason this trigger changed and pointed to a different entity, maybe, or moved zones. Either way, what we'll do is we'll just do it like this. And this should be entity ID. We might never actually have the entity. In fact, like right here, we didn't. Yep, and this should be the entity ID too. And okay, run action. Yep, these both should have been the entity ID anyway, so that's saved us a problem that the compiler would have found. Okay, so acquire release, and we will make last trigger get encounter ID, and then this last trigger, should we just call it trigger, but equals T, and then we do a similar thing here. Last trigger is not equal to null, acquire encounter, last trigger get encounter ID. And if we release the trigger, we'll do the same thing as up here. Which meant we could have called release. Yeah, I think this logic is clearer. We don't need to make those methods. Actually, what I like better, we're still going to need these though. Yeah, I mean, so I could have held on to the encounter object in here, and I might still just to have it. And so that would be in here, we would say, so we're going to inquire the encounter. So just we have it in case we want it. But we called these other methods because, in fact, we could, because we might want some other logic, we might want to do it in multiple places, and this one's just really easy is the problem. It's one line, so that's why I get right. But this one is not. It's more complicated. encounter index. So when we release it, we want to get it. And if it's null, don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. Okay, so encounter.release. In fact, we can say if encounter release, which means it's good, should be removed. We can say encounter index remove entity ID. So we got a little thing there, and we got to say boolean. And we can say return use count less than or equal to 0. So when the encounter is released, we'll call its deactivate encounter, and we'll return true if it should be really removed from the index because it's like fully released. Okay, so as we activate and deactivate zones, these guys should activate and deactivate. And since they're one-to-one relationship right now between zones, it's a little silly, but we do it. And the only thing we don't do correctly is we don't set the filter for this to be only the active zones. And that would be what we would use one of these activation zone listeners. So as it activates and deactivates, we would add it and remove it from a filter so that we're only looking at the encounter triggers for active zones. But for this live stream, I don't think we need to do that. But what we do want to do is make sure things compile. After all that code, how many compiler errors do I get? Lots! Expected. Oh, I didn't put get used to typing pseudocode. There's somebody I knew once called it Persuado code. Which I thought was really cute. Cannot find symbol from mob encounter system. I put it back. Oh, we don't need that, but we do. Yeah, why did I do that? That ordering was weird. Sim.game action system. Okay, let's see if the Java code will compile now. We got more problems. So those are warnings. Whoa. Error, abstract game system. So I did need that other. I should have known better. I said I should have known better. Method does not override. 30. Oh well. I mean, when you don't have the right classes loaded, you get all kinds of weird errors from Java. So, or right classes imported. So yeah, that's just line 70. Chat here. Get encounter. Acquire. ACQ wire. ACQ wire. Encounter. Oh. Yeah, so it isn't so dumb that I did this as a separate method because we're actually going to want to do this and return encounter. So that's not something we could have done all in one line anymore. So that's cool. It's cool. Blah, 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 blah. All right, one more thing. Missing return statement on line 67. Return result. But of course. Yeah, a lot of times when I create it, I acquire it in here, or I put the acquire in here automatically, but sometimes you want to look up an encounter without acquiring it. Yeah, okay, so that was all good. Let's make sure that this is working. Okay, so log info. Let's do this and this. Alright, so let's make sure that these are getting called. Wow, that was like an hour's worth of work just to hook up the scripts that were already hooked up. Neat, eh? Okay, what's we got going on now? Come on. Alright, let's see what we got going. Oh. When you make a new game system, you actually have to add it to the world. It's not going to add itself. So over here in the game server, where we've added the activation thingy, yeah, so let's look for that. And so right after that, we want to add the mob encounter system. Boink. And what is the trigger system? I think that's, oh yeah, as we enter and leave areas. Mob encounter system. So as we enter towns and exit towns and get near buildings and stuff, we get encounter events. Or enter, exit, approaching, leaving events. That is what we hooked into to spawn the town NPC. Before I sign off tonight, maybe I'll show you guys what I've been doing with the replacement for the current model view state. It's getting much closer, and it is way, code-wise, way more elegant. So like I've appreciated getting to work on it a little bit every night, because I kind of add something and then I remove everything that's not necessary. So it's like minimal code and stuff. It's kind of nice. Why, oh why? Frick. And you know what? We're not logging. Activate zone. Oh. It's late and it's Friday. That's what I blame. We don't instantiate the trigger system. I think we do that on start, right? On start, we create it when we create it. We could create it on start too. So, okay. So we'll create it on start. This triggers equals new encounter trigger container ed triggers start triggers update, right? And triggers stop. Yep. Triggers update, triggers stop, and for posterity, we'll make sure it's set to null, just so make sure life cycle is thing. And then we're going to add a bunch of logging here, so that we know things are actually running. Add object E, and I'll turn these into trace later because it's super useful to have them. Okay, and then same with these. I'll go back and turn them into, all right, I'll turn them into trace logging later. That was the last sip of Pepsi. Lukewarm. Blech. Come on, you can drag that slider. Come on, come on, come on. Push, 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 push. Push, 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 push. There we go. Oh, why are you taking so long? Why are you taking so long? Uh-oh. That's why. Yeah. Butterfly encounter. Why are you already activating, though? Because there's already encounters created, that's why. But we need to mob counter system so we can see all those. Yes, so. Hey, but used to make your game go bad and you wouldn't be able to do anything. I think it's so at least that I got fixed. I think that the issue was activate encounter on butterfly encounter. I wonder if it's butterflies encounter. I think that's what it is. I think that's what I did because that's the kind of thing I would do. No, butterfly encounter. Activate encounter, deactivate encounter. Takes no arguments. At least it dies right away. Okay, so it's telling me it has it. Unless there's a spelling error I'm not seeing. Like here's where I take this and I like I would take this and I pull it into here. Yeah, so like on a better operating system, this would have all been multiple lines already. So it's telling me action not found, activate encounter, action type, butterfly encounter. Yes. Okay, so we don't care about this. It's basically telling us a better story. But it's telling us there are similar actions already. One called activate encounter, which I think is what we tried to call. So what's the big deal? And then all of the actions are activate encounter and deactivate encounter. So it makes no sense to me. So this is where I come and do this bit and I say, you didn't find this. And so let's like compare them. They look the same to me. Action not found for on a butterfly encounter, but then you tell me that you have it. Similar actions. Literally the same name. Okay, so let's make sure There's not a hidden space somewhere. Activate encounter, deactivate encounter. That's all good. Like it knows they're there. It's called butterfly encounter. So this is the kind of stuff that gets me sidetracked because everything should work. But somehow it's still not. No hidden spaces. So let's look at game action system. Make sure it's not doing something weird. An action target, action name, params. In fact, the error we got was action environment, run action. Okay, so we're already on the game loop. And resolve action failed to find it. You know what, I'm going to hack into... Or actually, resolve action might already have... This is part of the open source stuff, so it's one step removed. Do I already have them open somewhere? No. Probably not. That never stopped me before. I thought for sure I already had these open. Okay. So right around here, we want to go here. Blah, 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 blah. Action. Oh, I do already have them open. So action context. Is that what I was complaining about? Resolve action. Action type find action. Action type is the object type. Oh, so the type of action, yeah. So then we look up object type, and it's calling find action. I think we can turn on trace logging if we really want. Oh, it's not doing anything. Matches. Yeah. Okay, so find action. So sometimes it's easier to just do this than it is to monkey with log configurations. And so then you can also add some stuff. Named actions and do this, and then oops, checking action. Params don't match action. I think that's an array. Yep. Okay. Now let's go over here. Build that library. Boy, you 4 viewers that says who was hung around. God bless you, really. This is maybe the least entertaining I think I've been. All right. At least we'll fail right away. Early failure is always the best, really. He's going to load the world. Initialize the game modules. Yes, yeah, me too. Just at least to see the logs. And then I got all the hooks I need to... Well, I'll talk about what's next, but... Yeah, okay, so we failed again, but we expected it. So let's just go ahead and kill all this. Kill that noise. Okay, so up here. Find actions, activate encounter. Named actions. Yep, we found both of them. Oh. Why is it take... Oh. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Oh, let me put this back the way it was. So it's telling me, you know, it takes that the action takes an object as its argument. Because in Groovy, let me show you. So if you don't put anything here, it automatically takes, if you don't put anything here, it's like you said this, right? Which means that this takes an argument. You actually have to do this. Now they do not take an argument. So see, if I had passed an argument for some reason, like if I thought, well, why don't we pass this? Why not? Then this would never have come up because I wouldn't have made that mistake. But, you know, live and learn. So this should pass this time. Hooray! Oh, it hasn't gotten to that part yet. Alright. Okay, got farther. So we should be able to go over here and see. Ooh, look at that. Acquire, add, acquire, add, acquire, add. If you look for the... why did you not run the scripts? Because you acquired all those things. Let's join just in case it's an issue. But I don't think so. I think something else is still wrong. It was trying to call him though. That's weird because it was failing to call him and now it's not. Yeah, come on. Give me back my mouse. Here we go. Found existing entity, found existing entity. But we still don't see those scripts. Let me just double check that. Let's just make sure. Let's grep butterfly encounter. Just in case something else is going on. Okay, there we go. Oh, right. So the logging is smarter, and so it actually logs based on the type. So it is actually being run. We've got all those activates. If we move across the thingy, if we move across here, like it should deactivate a bunch of these guys. Except it did not. Oh. Right. because we're not hooked into zone activation, that is separate. They only get deactivated when their triggers get removed. So right now I could do this if the trigger, so if we go to deactivate a zone and we find a trigger in that zone, then remove entity trigger. Or did I create a, when I delete an object, that'd be the object tool. They all have it though. Delete object. Remove entity, that's all I do there. It's remove entity that calls the other things. Yep. Oh, there's a cleanup method. I kind of think remove entity should call that. Anyway, that's not a problem for today. So basically, rather than having the encounter system be smart about zone activation and deactivation, we can just remove the trigger, which will deactivate that. And this is what, for butterflies, this is what we want to do anyway, or at least put a decay on it so that in a few seconds it goes away. In case the player is moving back and forth between zones, we won't be constantly recreating butterfly encounters. Because that's quite common too. Players don't know that they're on the edge of a zone, and so you want meander back and forth just a little bit across that line back and forth, and so you want to avoid engine churn during those processes. And usually like a cache works, but in this case we just delay decay, or we delay removal of the trigger. So anyway, we'll enter the world. I should have turned the other thing on so that I could show you that too. So anyway, real quickly, let's show the grid so we know what we're crossing. Resume. Okay, so we should have gotten a bunch of activate. Now, as we move across this line, we should get a bunch of deactivates. No, in fact, we didn't even get the trigger removal. Okay, I'm going to debug this for a second. We're getting our stuff called, which is better than we were getting. I'm going to do two things so that I can get close to closing this out. Let's assume we log info removing trigger, okay? And did we see trigger remove? We saw releases. Oh, we saw a bunch of releases. So does that mean we eventually saw? Yeah, so we eventually saw the deactivates, but only when we were leaving, not when we were removing these. So let's add some tracking to that. So I'm going to do three things. I'm going to add tracking here. I already did. So we'll check that. And then to save time when we turn on, we don't constantly have to show the grid, and then I'm going to re-enable my my new model view state so that you can see that I'm getting close with that. It doesn't look like I'm getting close, but you'll have to trust me. I split my concerns into 2 different abstraction layers, and I've got one done, basically. I'm still trying to figure out where lighting falls, whether it falls in this or falls on the model side, but we'll see. So now we'll see a bunch of these crosshairs. And the grid should be turned on automatically. Come on, let me in. Little pig, let me in. So it should be creating all these entities now. Yeah, the grid is set up. Okay, so let's turn... If we could turn back time, and we could pause it like that. Okay, alright, so butterfly. Okay, everything got activated, no big deal. World APIs, we found it existing, so they're not getting removed for real. If they're not getting removed for real, then that would be why crossing a border doesn't do anything. So if we cross this border, did we get a bunch of deactivates? No. So why? Oh, but that should have been the zone listener. So world APIs, deactivate zone, deactivate zone, deactivate zone. Wait. Why didn't you remove anything? So it's not finding... So this query is not finding anything on the deactivate. But it did find it on the activate. Oh, duh. I do this all the time, by the way. So if trigger, like if we have one, then we remove it. That's why that's not working. Okay, so we'll fix that in a second, because I have to restart to make that happen. But I want to show you sort of, you see these little crosshairs? Those are the new model view state that's keeping track of where all the entities are. You see it always lines up with her as she moves around. So the parent-child relationships are all working. You know, direction, the mobs are working. If I was to place an object, can I place an object? Well, so I could place a butterfly, and you'll see. That's why I turned it off, because you can't, like, you see. But anyway, so that all is working. And so what I have to do, so that's the abstraction. I've got that simplified so that it's, you know, very straightforward code that keeps track of the different kinds of objects, you know, mobs and things. And so then the next thing is to build a layer on top of that that, instead of loading these big crosshairs, loads her in, applies her skin, and all that stuff that, you know, is kind of tied in a really ugly way right now. And it's all ultimately so that when I start chopping blocks, I get the right thing. Man, those are some good looking flowers. So anyway, let's fix the, yeah, it's kind of funny to see that, you know, Jack. That's what it looks like to me. You know, you play jacks as a kid. Okay, so if we run it again, we should be able to see these deactivations and the actual removals. And that's why we weren't actually removing them before. Blah, 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 blah. And what I could do... It's already 11. but I'll explain what I'll do next. We'll see this work. Sort of. I wish we could have gotten the actual butterflies to spawn in, but I will get that working this weekend because this is really close. Because what's got to happen... Okay, so let's run time forward this time. We got a little butterfly flying around there. Okay, so if we... Oh, good, we're right on an edge. Like to the point where I think it's that way to cross it. Okay, so if we look over here... Excuse me. Okay, so we see... Where's the butterfly one? Okay, so we activated a whole bunch of things. Now if we come over here and we cross this border, we should have deactivated some. Yay! Look! Deactivated. Woohoo! And so the next step, and I'll put the comments in. So the next step is, instead of doing this, we would want to say, look at the world data to see if there are any flowers. No flowers. Don't create it. Okay, so then, and the only kind of bad part of this is that we have to kind of redo that work up here. And so there could be a reason to just go ahead and put that up here. Look for flowers, spawn butterflies based on frequency dice roll. And then in here, despawn any of the spawned butterflies that are still alive. Right? Because you don't want to despawn a butterfly if it was dead and the player's carrying it around now in their inventory, kind of thing, right? You only want to spawn the ones. You only want to despawn the ones that you spawned and that are still just flying around the flowers, right? If they're dead, yeah, if they're dead, you leave them. If the player picked them up, you leave them. So only if they're still alive, flying around, then you can despawn them. Otherwise, so there's some logic there, but basically we're really close. That I already had the code to like look around. That's in that other script, but to look around the world, and I'm probably going to make a more efficient version in Java because doing that in Groovy is actually kind of slow. And there are some other optimizations I can make by looking at the terrain imagery. You know, the 2D map for in this case. Like if you look at the 2D map and and that's telling you it's all desert or all snow, there's not going to be any flowers, so you don't even have to bother searching. It will also tell you the current terrain height, so you can narrow down where you're searching, that kind of thing. Anyway, so we're getting really close, and I'll have that done probably tomorrow after I'm done doing yard work and taking my younger child to rent a tuxedo. Anything else, guys? Do you have any other questions before I start closing it down? Otherwise, I wish you all a mighty good weekend, and I hope that you have a great productive time in whatever creative endeavors you are attempting. If you haven't watched Fallout, watch Fallout, and otherwise I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining.